Well, I found a sign. It was so great. Rodney, this is where you're going to understand this. It said, if ignorance is bliss, I must be the happiest person in the world. It was the ignorant part. For leaving you off, Holly. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. If ignorance is bliss, I must be the happiest person in the world. I just thought I'm going to get that and hang that in my office. I already knew you knew I was ignorant. I knew that, but I am the happiest person in here, I think, right now, but maybe not. That may not be true. But anyway, do you all ever sit around and just wonder, how do they come up with what they're talking about on Sunday morning? Do you ever think about that? Well, we do. We think about that. We talk. In fact, Josh and Rob and I oftentimes will brainstorm when we meet together. And sometimes Josh and I will collaborate. But this year, when we started talking about Advent, and you know every year Advent's the same, right? I mean, you're going to have hope and peace and joy and love. You're just going to say the same thing, but what are you going to say different this year? How are you going to do it? Well, Josh, the elf, like Buddy the elf, that's his first cousin, I don't know if you knew that, and he was sitting around one day and he came up with all this stuff, just little one-liners, like, hope, wrote that as one line, and I think he added a song. And then went to peace and did the same thing in joy. So what I did was I took those little phrases and those little sentences that he made for each of the weeks. I took that like an assignment from a professor, and I thought, I'm going to try to come up with a sermon on what he put there. It's like a challenge. And I've actually had fun doing it. But I want to tell you this, getting prepared for this week, I ran into a bit of a buzzsaw. Because I did not realize that there were such strong feelings about this topic. Now, the topic is joy. It's more than happiness. And that's not exactly how Josh wrote it, but that's how it ended up being in the title. And he hasn't corrected me yet either, and so he hasn't said, no, Pastor Ernie, that wasn't really what I had in mind. He hasn't done that yet, so I'm not going to ask him. But joy, it's more than happiness. A lot of people have strong feelings about the joy and the happiness thing. A lot of people see them as synonymous. In fact, in my Sunday school class today, we actually talked about that. It's happiness. We say, what do you think about when you think about joy? First thing they said, happiness. And then there's a whole other group of people that don't think they go together at all. They're two completely different things. And so it was a little bit difficult to get going on this because there was so much stuff that I had to wade through to get ready for this morning. But I did find something significant I thought was good. I believe these are good words for anybody here who cares for a good word. It was the 10 rules for happier living. 1, give something away, no strings attached. 2, do a kindness and then forget it. 3, spend a few minutes with the aged. Now, since I'm getting there, I thought that was a good idea. The experience will be processed. 4, look intently to the face of a baby and marvel. 5, laugh often. It's life's lubricant. 6, give thanks. 1,000 times a day is not enough. 7, pray, or you'll lose the way. 8 is work with vim and vigor. 9 is to plan as though you'll live forever, because you will. And 10, live as though you'll die tomorrow, because you will on some tomorrow. So that's the 10 rules for happier living. You can just tuck those away or throw them in the trash, whatever you want to do. I just thought I'd share them with you. But those are great, right? Aren't those great? And if life were just that simple, it would be wonderful. But here's the thing. Despite the different perspectives that I ran across in the research of getting ready for today, the one thing that really stood out to me was that experiencing happiness depends on external factors. Happiness happens to us. Now, every one of us, we seek it. We want it. We desire it. We pursue it. But feeling happy is not a choice that we make. Joy, on the other hand, is a choice purposefully made. Happiness doesn't bring joy, and joy is not the byproduct of happiness. Joy is something greater than happiness. And you know why? Because joy is a fruit of the Spirit. Joy is a fruit of the Spirit. And when we find joy, it's filled with comfort and packaged in peace. It's an attitude of the heart and of the Spirit. And it's often synonymous with pursuing a Christian life. That's what joy is. Now, I think it's safe to say that most everyone wants happiness. I mean, I want happiness. I think most everybody I talk to wants some happiness. And I believe that most people do what they do for the purpose of finding happiness. They work hard so that they can buy possessions that they think will make them happy. And we look for happiness in entertainment, in hobbies, in sports, in passions, and even various addictions. We're looking for happiness. And some people even look way deep down inside themselves, thinking that's where that elusive happiness is located. Now, when we consider that happiness seems to be like the main goal in so many people's lives, isn't it interesting that the Bible actually has very little to say about happiness? The Bible does talk a lot about something we confuse with happiness, and that's that word joy that we're talking about today. Now, the kind of joy that the Bible talks about, it goes much deeper than our happiness. You see, happiness deals with what is happening, and happiness depends on circumstances. Genuine joy, on the other hand, does not depend on what's happening. Joy is an inner sense of well-being that has nothing to do whatsoever with circumstances. The kind of joy that the Bible teaches can't be found in possessions. It can't be found in entertainment. And frankly, even looking deep within yourself will not help you find joy. The first line of the song we just sang, that Katie just led us in, joy to the world. Yeah, that sums it up best. Why? It's the only reason, the one and only reason that we find joy in this world is why? Joy to the world, the Lord has come. That's why we find joy. That is the exact reason we find it. Genuine joy comes from finding Christ. Now, if you receive Christ as King of your life, then He provides joy. And here's how I want you to think about it. Just like your body needs food and exercise and rest, your spirit craves a relationship with God. It's the same thing. Without this relationship, then your body is going to become starved. Your body's going to become restless. And in fact, there is this huge God-shaped hole in your everyday life. Even if you look deeply within yourself, happiness is not what you'll find. What you will find is a space that only God can fill. And if you try to fill it with anything else besides God, what we're going to find when we do that is we're going to find that we are constantly and completely dissatisfied. That's what's going to happen. Now, if we want to find true joy, it comes with the understanding of the incarnation of Jesus Christ. That's what this season is all about. That's what Advent is all about, the coming of Christ, the incarnation of Christ. And if we want to find true joy, it comes with the understanding of that incarnation of our Savior and Lord. That's the good news of great joy that the shepherds heard about in the field that Mr. Hillman just read about, and it's what we know about as well. That is true joy. It's what we are given through Christ. So this morning, I just want to say 4 brief things about true joy. First, true joy comes when we focus on the eternal instead of the temporal. And I want to use a passage of Scripture that might seem a little weird to you, but it's Philippians 4, verses 4 and 5. It's where Paul says what Henry was saying a while ago, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I will say, rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to all men. The Lord is at hand. How do we find this? How do we do this rejoicing? Well, Paul says it. It's in the Lord. That's why he does it. He tells us to rejoice in the Lord because that is the key to everything. Rejoicing in the Lord is the key to everything. And we rejoice in the Lord because there's no other avenue to do that. You can't find true joy in your children, not in your spouse, not in your job. Now, they're great blessings. They are great blessings, but they're temporal. And each of those blessings, by the way, flow down from God. If you can't recognize that, then you're going to miss your joy because, let me tell you, your spouse is going to disappoint you at some point. Your children are going to make terrible choices. And let's be honest, your job is somewhat subjective, almost always. Paul is telling us to keep ourselves centered in the Lord because when we do, we'll see how everything has a purpose. Everything is leading us somewhere. Everything is taking us on a path or a journey. Focus on what is eternal. That is the key. The second thing about true joy is it's wrapped up in truth. And again, I'm going to use some different kind of verse. This is from James chapter 1, it's verses 2 and 3. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Now, this is a reminder that when we find that we are pressed in those very trying times that life often sends our way, things that hit us totally unexpected, like coughing till 4 o'clock in the morning and keeping us awake and maybe having to go to the hospital. I mean, you are not expecting this kind of stuff. The idea is to not focus on the trials. Now, this is a hard thing to do. Don't focus on the trials. Focus on what God is doing in the trial. That's the key. That's what James is trying to tell us. That's where we will find joy. You see, what happens in the Christmas story that we love so much, the birth narrative that we're talking about in this season, is that God transcends everything that separated man from himself. He tore down every barrier by sending his Son to pay the price so that we, all of us, can have a relationship with him. That is now a reality. That is now a truth. So when James says, consider it pure joy, there's only one way that this is possible. And we would be foolish if we don't realize that the Lord has to be the center of this. I mean, let's look at this honestly. It'd be really silly if in the process of getting hit over the head, we went, oh, isn't that great? Because see, that's not what God's talking about. That's not what James means. He's saying consider it joy because the testing of your faith is going to produce something that is far greater and of eternal significance, that's going to do something for you down the road. It's going to prepare you. It's going to help you. It's not going to be immediate. It may be a while. But you have to be able to endure that and understand it's what God's going through. Now, let's be honest again. Nobody likes to go through trials. But just like we talked in Sunday school today, there's a process. Anybody in Sunday school want to say that process out loud? The three? No, not Paul's think and pray. I did that last week. No, I'm talking about what Mary went through. You remember how Mary was, when the angel came, she was questioning, how can this happen? She was a little bit frustrated. She didn't understand. But then she went to yeah, she was troubled, and then she went through the questioning. We all go through questioning whenever we go through trials. What do we say? Why, God, why? Well, that's the testing, and then we get to acceptance, right? Okay, but you can't jump to step 3. You got to go through the trial, and that's what this is talking about right here. You've got to go through the trial, and James is telling us that there is eternal significance in what is going to happen. If you'll ride those trials out, God will prepare you. The third truth, true joy empowers us. In Hebrews 12, verses 2 and 3, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith for the joy set before him. In other words, when Jesus kept himself focused on God and what God was doing, he was able to endure the cross. Now think of how powerful that is. As humans, we get so tunnel visioned on what the immediate is, we forget about what's going to happen with the eternal part. We don't even think about that. But now we are empowered because we don't realize that God is doing a mighty work. We can't be empowered because we don't realize the mighty work that God is doing. And that mighty work is going to do a mighty work, not just in our lives, but in the lives of other people as well. It's going to spread to other lives. And that's why it's important that we not be tunnel vision, that we see that there's a greater plan in mind from God's perspective. And here's the part. Your joy is infectious. People want what you have when you're filled with joy. It's just a fact. True joy empowers us. And then the fourth thing about true joy. True joy remembers who is in charge. Now, I'm going to admit to you, and I'm saying it from the pulpit, I'm the preacher of the church, but I'm saying Sometimes it does appear that Satan has his way on this earth. We've experienced it here in our church. Things happen and you just say, good night, how could that happen like that? And it seems like just when things are going good, somebody pulls the rug right out from under you. Y'all ever have those experiences? Well, that's Satan at work, and sometimes it appears that he's got some kind of power. But in our reality as Christians, in the spiritual reality, the one that controls everything, God is in charge. God is in charge. There's nothing that happens outside his view. There's nothing that happens outside of his allowing it. God is there. God is always there. In fact, that is why we can make a statement like this bold statement from Romans 8:28. We know that God works all things together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Now, that doesn't mean everything's going to go perfect all the time. Don't hear it read like that. But it means that God is in control. God is the one who's running the show, and that gives us reason for joy. Because God's intent for us is what? God's intent is not to harm us, but to bless us. God's intent is not to tear us down, but to build us up. God's intent for our lives is for us to become everything that he made us to be. And then for everything we were made to be, to become what everyone else in the world needs. And what is that? Salt and light. It's in the scripture. We're to be salt and light to this world. Our joy will help people see that. Our hope will bring people to that. Our love will position people for that. Joy, it is more than happiness. It is more than happiness. It requires an awareness of God's presence in our lives, and with that, we really can make a difference in our world by sharing that joy. Now, I wonder this morning if you have that type of joy. Now, I hope that you do, but if you don't, I hope that you wouldn't be too proud to ask for it, and it's simply by asking Jesus into your heart